All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to our Carson Coffee and Conversation. Today we'll be exploring our career management and developing your elevator pitch. I'm Carrie Knight. I'm the Student Engagement Specialist for Carson College of Business in Vancouver. I'll be helping to facilitate today's event with our presenters and guests from Perkins. This event is part of Carson Professional Network. The Carson Professional Network creates community for Cougs and Coug friends to open opportunities to build relationships and lead to the vast range of business and community opportunities in our region. Network membership is open to all Coug students, recent alumni, industry executives. Join today using the link that will be dropped into the chat box. I'm really excited today for this event about career management and developing your elevator pitch. As our attendees log in, we'd like to remind you to participate in some of our ground rules. Please keep your mics muted. Please consider turning your video on so that our attendees can see your faces, the expression and laughter. If you have questions, please put it into the chat box or raise your hand. At the end of today's event, we'll have a question and answer. Also, if attendees at the end of the event will just stay logged on and take our survey. I'd like to thank all of our participants for being here today. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our guest speakers. Please welcome Jake Johnson and Gretchen Coco. I'll be letting each of our speakers introduce themselves before briefly jumping into our presentation. So we're gonna start with Jake. He's an auditor at Perkins. He graduated 2018 from Washington State University, Vancouver. Jake, if you'll just take a minute and give us your elevator pitch and let everyone get to know you.
Sure. So kind of like what Carrie said. So my name is Jake Johnson. I'm an audit staff at Perkins & Company. I'm also a volunteer treasurer on the board of directors of AMA PDX, which is a local marketing nonprofit. And I graduated from WSUV in May in 2018 with a double major in accounting and finance. And while I was at WSU, I was the vice president of events for IMA Beta Alpha Psi. And I currently live in Hazeldale with my fiance and two dogs, Gus and Daisy. And that's pretty much everything about me.
Perfect. Gretchen, would you like to give us your elevator pitch? Gretchen works at Perkins also as an auditor, and she graduated 2016 from Washington State University, Vancouver.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gretchen. As Carrie said, I graduated in 2016 from WSU Vancouver. I've taken a few different jobs since college. I started out in corporate accounting, and it wasn't necessarily my thing. So I ended up down at a small boutique firm in Lake Oswego called TKW. I did mostly governmental work there for auditing, and then I decided that government work wasn't the niche that I wanted to be in. So I switched over to be an auditor at Perkins a little over a year ago now. I think I just celebrated 1 year. So when I was at WSUV, I also was on the officer team at the same time as Jake, if I recall correctly. And then I also really like to spend some time outside when possible. Not currently possible with all of the smoke in our area, but we have hope that it will go away soon, at least this week.
All right, thank you so much to both Jake and Gretchen. We're gonna get started with the presentation. Like I mentioned, if there's any questions, please drop those questions into the chat box and we'll get to them at the end, or we'll all be able to ask our questions personally. So our first question, we're gonna start with Jake and then Gretchen if you'll answer after. What are the key steps you took to be successful in your career?
Alrighty, so I'll start. And so, by the way, you can cut me off if I'm going too long, but I'm very conscious of the time, and I'm going to really try to stay on track. So, the most important thing is networking. That's been the most important thing in my career. You know, I started. I knew nothing about networking. My parents are nurses. They're not really in the business world, and I just started at WSUV, and then the next week I was at Meet the Firms. So I really had to figure it all out. But basically, everybody you meet at events or in my case, it was a Beta Alpha Psi events. I get the business cards, the guest speakers, follow up, say thank you, and try to build a relationship on that. Add them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's very important. Everybody should have a LinkedIn. If I meet somebody or if we have a guest speaker, I'll add them on LinkedIn. or if I meet somebody at Meet the Firms or a different event, I'll send them a message and something about the conversation that we had. And something that I do that I didn't stop networking once I graduated. I still do it. And I go to anything I can find. There are ribbon cutting ceremonies from the Chamber of Commerce. So I go to those and I meet people, and then you start seeing the same people and continue meeting people. And then I'll probably let Gretchen go so I don't go too long.
I agree. I would say the same thing. Networking, no matter the industry that you're in business, whether it's accounting or HR or anything, networking is probably your most important tool as a student for jobs after graduation and career management. As I mentioned, I've changed jobs a couple times since I left school, and both of the jobs that I got after my very first job were opportunities that I got because of people that I knew. My first job at TKW, I knew a couple of ladies who worked there that I had gone to school with, and they knew that they were looking for auditors. So we met for coffee, and they connected me up with one of the partners there. And then I knew Arena from recruiting at WSUV, and even though I didn't think I wanted to go into public accounting, I kept up that connection with her. And so when I was ready to go a more commercial auditing route, I was able to email her and ask her out for coffee, and that's how I got the interview there. So even if you don't think it's an industry that you want to be in, it never hurts to have those connections. They've been very important for me.
And there are two quick things I want to add that I was going to say. So basically, I really started to be successful at WSU Vancouver. Your success in college is really important, and it translates to it can translate to your success afterwards. In the case of accounting, I really started to have a good reputation with the students and the professors, and you work hard at everything you do because those people who are in your groups are going to they can have some say in your employment at a future company. And if somebody could ask me like, oh, this person's applying to Perkins, but oh well, you could say, well, they were a superstar in this project and they're so amazing, or they really slacked off. They didn't put any effort in. They were sloppy. So your performance in college really is important, and the people that you work with. I mean, and accounting is a very small world, so I see so many people everywhere. So they're all out there, and definitely a good relationship with your professors. It's really important.
I have to say, as an instructor for BA 102 and HBM 101, you guys just like hit on all the points. I don't even have to teach my class anymore because that's exactly what we teach students. That networking is so important, LinkedIn. So thank you for hitting on those points. Gretchen, we're gonna start the next question with you. What is the biggest challenge in accounting or the business world at the moment?
I would say, other than the obvious with COVID, that technology has been a big issue for companies even before all of this happened. Coronavirus very much forced companies to go more remote and to learn how to use the technology that they have available. But I know a lot of companies were kind of struggling with transitioning into using technology more. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's because of people just stuck in a rut with how they want to do things. This is the way we've always done them, so that's the way we're going to continue to do them. That's been a little bit my experience in some companies, but some companies just don't know how to move forward with technology. And so as a student, it's really important to learn how to be effective in a remote environment, learning how to collaborate with people who aren't in the same room with you. While as a student, I would have felt very cheated by not being able to wander through the cafeteria and see students from my classes and just like pop in and say, oh, hey, I'm really not understanding this concept. If you guys are studying it right now, can I sit down? I would have felt very cheated by that. But in the business world, especially as an auditor, you may not be in the same city as people that you're working with. My first job, I worked for an investment firm, and they had offices all over the country and all over the world. So I worked with people everywhere. And it's really important to learn how to do that, because I think that going forward, that's going to be an even bigger concern for companies.
Perfect. Jake?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the way I would answer this, I think the biggest challenge that we're facing as a firm, and probably every accounting firm, is due to COVID, and it's basically how much uncertainty there is, because we still the biggest impact was scheduling, because when we have a busy season, everybody's scheduled on audits very specifically, and it's this perfect schedule, and if everything happens like it should, then everything's good. But then it all went in the air, and our clients were struggling, and so that was a major challenge with scheduling. And I'm curious what it'd be like this busy season. But also, I think our firms are facing, we still don't know the impact, because companies out there, they're still burning through their PPP loan money, their reserves, and utilizing any debt they can get, or however they get financing. And so I think we are about to see, and are currently seeing, that impact, but it's definitely uncertain because of that.
Thank you. Our next question, Jake, if you will start. Who is making the greatest advancements in the industry, and what are they doing?
So I'd say the companies that are making the greatest advancements are the ones that adapt to technology. And for example, advancements in automation of auditing procedures. I could relate a metaphor be people going paperless. And I mean, even to a few years ago, there were so many companies that were very resistant to change, filing things electronically, and it just, when things like that happen, we become so much more efficient, but so many people are resistant because they get very comfortable doing what they do, and it's easy, and they know how to do it, and basically being able to adapt. And I think currently blockchain is something that's very interesting. I've read 3 books and I still don't understand what it is, but I think it can have a profound impact on accounting, because a lot of people are focused on the value of it and the speculation of the currency, but it really has a potential for an accounting application. It's basically an audit trail. So I haven't seen it integrated yet in auditing, but I think it's going to be the next thing, but basically being able to adapt to those kind of things.
Gretchen?
Yeah, I would say the adaptation. I don't really have anything specific additionally to add, but I do have a client who very, very attached to their paper, and they had a very difficult time this year getting their audit done, because literally everything that they had was on paper. They didn't want to provide anything at all electronically, and it made it very difficult to get their audit done. And fortunately, I'm very grateful for Perkins, I guess, responding to them in a way that, no, we're not going to send our auditors on site just because you refuse to scan things. And that made me feel very supported. So I appreciated that. But I think that the adapting to paperless is a really good analogy for companies that are going to be able to adapt and change and move forward, and come out of this even stronger. It'll be interesting to see how companies continue to do that.
Yeah, and something too about that is the companies that adapt, let's say auditing procedures, if there's automation out there to make us more efficient, then if we as a firm aren't adopting this new technology and procedures, our competitors are going to become more efficient, and they can reduce their audit fees, and it just becomes more competitive.
Awesome. Thank you for those examples. Our next question, Gretchen, we'll start with you. What are common misconceptions people have with the industry, and how can we combat these misconceptions and communicate more effectively?
I'll specifically talk about public accounting, because that's my wheelhouse for this. And I would say the most common misconception is a bit of a two-sided coin, because there seems to be 2 common misconceptions about public accounting. And the first one is busy season isn't that bad. And the second one is busy season is horrible and will ruin your life, and you're going to work 100-hour weeks for, for the next 3 years. And I think it's really somewhere in the middle. I think that sometimes students get, information about how many hours they're going to be working, what busy seasons are going to be like, how many hours are, all of that. And they get really terrified because they think, oh, I can't do that. And they steer away from it. That's what happened to me. I steered away from public accounting because I thought there is no way I'm going to be able to work 80, 100-hour weeks for longer than about a week or two without completely burning out. It turns out that most companies don't do that anymore. I would say some of the big four, you will still have that. But especially in Portland, most of the firms have a really strong sense of work-life balance where they don't really want you to burn out and leave after a year. So they're really trying to combat that misconception. And I think the most important thing that a student can do if they're thinking, oh, this isn't for me because this is too many hours, or this is, this is going to be too much, is talk to people who either work at that firm or who have connections with that firm. I know it feels really uncomfortable to ask the recruiter, how many hours am I going to be working? Because you automatically think you're putting yourself out there as someone who doesn't want to work hard, but that's not how it's viewed. Just be kind of careful how you word it. But I know at Perkins, we work 50 to 55-hour weeks during busy season. Sometimes more if it calls for it, sometimes less if there's not enough work. It really just depends on the firm. And I don't think it's a standard to be 80 or 100-hour weeks anymore. Jake?
Yeah, I would say a common misconception is that accounting is easy. That was a joke, because accounting is really hard. But I would say when I was learning from my textbooks, I mean, I read every page of every textbook I had, and I was expecting things to be kind of like that in accounting, and it's so different because I was really trying to, in my first year of public accounting, I was really just trying to go from the textbook to what I was doing. But in practice, it's so much different. You use the fundamentals of what you learn, but things do not work in the real world like they do in the textbook. And thank goodness for materiality, because if I couldn't pass on variances, I would still be on like my first audit. So a lot of people think you only network until you have a job, and you really should continue networking always. I know a lot of people, they network and they get a job, and you just kick your feet up and do it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you get laid off, or if you decide this isn't for me, then what? And then you have to start it all over. So if I decided tomorrow, like, well, maybe I want to leave Perkins, I have this huge network I can reach out to. And yeah, don't be surprised. I'll give credit. I got this piece of advice from my fiance Beth, because I had to get help on this one. But don't be surprised if you start your career in one direction and become passionate about something else. I know she started at a company called NetRush in digital marketing, and now she's a research analyst, and very different, just working with data. And in my case, I mean, even in accounting, I know a lot of people. There was somebody at Perkins who was a manager or a senior manager, and he quit and started doing software development. So that's kind of a crazy example, but if you, let's say you're crazy about, I'm going to work at, I don't know, Apple or something, and then you are really interested in government accounting, that's not a good example. But just don't be surprised if you become passionate about something different.
Perfect. Thank you, Jake. I am a living example of that. I started my career in sports medicine. Then I got a degree in deaf education to work with sign language, and now I'm working at the College of Business. So I'm all over the place, but it's okay to be passionate about a million different things and try them all out. So thank you for sharing. Jake, we're gonna go back to you. In regards to your career, do you remember a specific experience where you wish that you would have done something differently? If you were to do it over again, what would you change?
So I have an example. In my first year of public accounting, I really wanted to understand the big picture. I really wanted to understand everything going on in the audit. because I just wanted to understand how everything connected and why we were testing everything, how it related to the audit plan, and eventually the financial statements. And I was put on this huge, probably our second biggest audit, and it was this fund, and it is probably the most complex thing I've ever seen in my life. And I would cause myself undue stress from trying to understand everything and how it all connected and why I was doing what I was doing. And it's always good. I still have that mindset. It's really good to have. But in the case of accounting and in my case of auditing, in a lot of cases, you really have to take it piece by piece. And then eventually you learn the big picture. So if I went back in time, I would have just focused on the test I was doing and think, what am I doing? How does it relate to this audit plan? And as far as the different assertions, and then let's say I do cash 1 month and then investments the next or the next year. Sometimes it could take a year to get the full picture. Sometimes it could take 5 years or 10 years, but I was really trying to rush that, and I would have felt a lot less stress if I just took it one piece at a time, because you just master those skills along the way.
Gretchen?
I agree, Jake, and I think I know which audit you're talking about. And even
Yeah.
And yes, it is very very challenging to try to get that in your first year. There's no way. I would say my experience stems from being more from a supervisory role. At my former firm, I was in charge on a job, and I was talking to one of my staff about how long, this set of 3 or 4 tasks should take her, because I was going to have to be off site for a couple days, and she was going to be working by herself. And one of the things that I apparently did not make clear to her was that if things start to go way outside this time frame, there might be something wrong, so please contact me. And instead she spent 3 12-hour days and half of her weekend getting it done, because I said you should be able to get it done by end of day Friday so that I can look at it on Monday. And it really caused for me that thought of, I just ruined this person's weekend because I did not make that clear enough. One of my personal philosophies is any response to your communication, or your the meaning of any communication is the response that you receive. And I did not get it clear to her whether she was supposed to just work 50 extra hours and get this done, or hey, there might be something wrong if it's taking more than this time frame, and maybe then come talk to me. And it turns out there was nothing wrong. There was just a really big piece of it that I had missed when I was doing my time estimating, and she thought it was her. And so I'm now much clearer about having people come to me when things are taking longer than they think that they should, and rather than spinning their wheels on it.
Perfect. So now I'd like to flip that and make it a little bit more positive. So a follow-up to the previous question, by the way of comparison, do you remember something that you've done or something that you wish everyone was doing, and why? So Gretchen, if you'll start.
Jake, do you have a good one for this?
I'll follow up to you. I can start. So it's different than what I mentioned previously, but I think if there's something I wish everybody is doing, is networking constantly and maintaining relationships. That's a hard thing to do. I even struggle with it. I try to put everybody I know in an Excel spreadsheet, but I need a better system. But what my goal would be for myself and for anybody else is maintaining those relationships and just keep in contact every few months, just say, hey, how's it going? And something I learned, I don't remember the exact percentage, but I heard from a legitimate source somewhere that a large percentage of jobs are never posted online, and they're just kind of created through networking or just fulfilling needs, and just somebody knows somebody. So that's another reason why it's important.
I guess something that I wish students knew more when they came out of school, if I can kind of twist your question a little bit, is Communication is really, really critical, even especially as everyone goes more remote. And I'm sure that every person that presents virtually is going to mention the remote environment and how much more challenging it is. But it really is a lot more challenging in the business world. And when I'm sitting at home in my office and I have 3 different people working on stuff for me, and I don't know where they are with anything because no one has sent me an update. You know, they get in the zone, they're working on it. They think, okay, everything is great. I'm right where I should be on this project. I'm, you know, exactly where my in charge wants me to be. That's great. The problem when you start to get up into the upper levels is, as I'm trying to keep my supervisors informed of where we are with a project, even if that someone is on time and doing exactly what where they should be, if I don't know that, I then have to come and ask. So just learning how to communicate preemptively, you know, send a daily end of day update. Here's where I got today. Here's where I am. We're still on track or not on track. It doesn't have to be a big long email. Just communicating more about where you are with your tasks really helps everything go more smoothly, because as you get, you know, further up the food chain, those people want to know, and if the person in front of you doesn't know, then they have to ask, and then it gets passed on, and it takes a lot of extra time to find that, rather than just sending out a quick 2-minute, here's where we are and everything's fine. Over communicate is better than under communicate.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely over communicate, and I'd recommend that to anybody. I always status updates constantly, because then there are no questions. So one piece of advice, one small thing, like 1A and then 1B. So start networking, make connections in school. Don't wait to graduate. I'm sure you've all heard that by now. But for me, I think one piece of advice is, I wish that I knew when I first started. I wish I knew that my seniors and managers knew that I didn't know anything, because I thought they were expecting me to know everything coming out of college. And you know, I learn as much as I can in my auditing and accounting classes, and they say audit accounts receivable, and I think, okay, you know, I have this textbook knowledge, and then I open it up and there are 10 documents and one Excel has 10 tabs. And you think, how is accounts receivable so complicated and in different currencies and stuff? And so and I didn't get their perspective really until people told me, but it was hard to believe, because you just want to do a really good job, and you want to be able to do it without asking many questions. But I would always feel bad when I asked questions. But now that I've done 2 years, I'm starting my 3rd year, and I'm starting to help people and delegate work, is that I know that if I ask them to do accounts receivable, I expect them to look at last year and then have 100 questions about what to do. And I would hope that they ask me questions, but I know that they don't know how to do it. And I mean, they have the fundamentals. They're capable, but it's so much to learn. And that's a perspective that I have, and that I've heard people talk about. So
I actually made it a rule for myself that if I didn't hear any questions within a 2-hour window, I would say, okay, what questions do you have? Because there's no way you're going to go 2 hours without having any questions when you're brand new as an auditor in this field. Even in tax as well. I know we don't have any tax public accounting representation here, but it's the same thing for tax. They are expecting you to have a million questions, because that's, you know, you can book learn it all you want, and then when you get there, it looks entirely different. Or you get something from a client that's not very well organized, or is missing pieces, and sometimes it's hard to know what you're missing when you're first starting. So yeah, ask the questions rather than assuming that you're the problem.
Yeah, sometimes you have the wrong report. I mean, I've done that where I just like grind on this report, and they say, oh, well, they just give us the wrong thing, because you have to understand that things look different every year. If I had accounts receivable last year, they could provide me something totally different this year that accomplishes the same objective. And so just being able to understand and just know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes just in overall business sense as well. My first job at an investment firm, one of my tasks was streamlining accounting processes and making better reports. And so reports that you're looking at, 1 month, they're going to look different next month. And so walking executives through how the new report works was also something that that I did. And yeah, it does apply across all business practices.
Perfect. That was some great advice. I just wanted to see if you all had any resources that students that are just starting out could use to do their career management.
Do you want me to start, Gretchen, or do you want to start?
Actually, I have a couple suggestions. Keep coming to these presentations, because when I was in school, this is one of the things that I learned the most from. And I hope that doesn't sound really overly confident, but you get the perspective from a lot of different people, and you learn little bits and pieces. So you might only take away 1 or 2 things from each presentation and learn things, but you're still making connections. You're still finding different perspectives from different industries. You might attend a presentation about something and think, oh, this is something I could be really passionate about. With the first presentation I attended about auditing, I thought, that looks terrifying. Let's do that. And here we are. So just going to presentations like this, and the Carson College of Business and the WSUV, I don't remember what it's called. It's like the Career Development Center. They do like resume reviews, mock interviews, things like that. That was extremely helpful for me. I'm really good at editing someone else's resume, but not my own. So, so taking your resume in, having someone else read it, stuff like that. And reaching out to people in the industry. If you're sitting there going, what do I want to do? I don't really know where I want to go. If you think you have some ideas, reach out to some people in the industry that you have hopefully built connections with through networking, and ask them to have a cup of coffee and talk to you. Like informational interviews is what we used to call them. I'm sure that that's still the same. Mm-hmm. And even now, virtually, I don't know, I don't speak for everybody, but most of the people that I know are perfectly happy to take 20 or 30 minutes out of their day and have a virtual coffee with you and talk with you about the industry and answer questions you have. So don't forget that is still available, and it might actually be better because no one has to travel. It might actually be easier to get people on the phone to talk to them about it. Jake, you have more?
Mine probably sounds pretty similar. I would say the best resources are people and books. And as an example, after I started auditing, I really wanted to learn about what blockchain is going to look like and how it's going to impact the accounting industry. And there's no information out there, or at least there wasn't at the time. And I really couldn't answer my questions based on anything on the internet. So I bought 3 different books, and I found people on LinkedIn. I thought, okay, there's almost nobody in the Portland area. I found 2 people in the Portland area who worked in blockchain. And so I sent them messages, and I went out to coffee with one person and just tried to learn as much as I could. And I still have no idea how blockchain works, but I will probably continue to keep trying to learn, and that's my strategy.
Perfect. So I just wanted to check before we open it up to students for their questions. If there's any last minute advice that you have, or anything that we didn't touch on that you think is really important for students to know as they're doing their career management.
Jake, you want to do this one first?
Sure. I think the most important thing is never burn bridges anywhere, ever, like at college or at work. And just think of it as like trying to be a good person. You go get coffee or wherever, just always treat everybody nicely. And in school, like I said, the accounting community is very small. Everybody knows everybody. I think it was last year at Meet the Firms. The day before Meet the Firms, I was eating pizza and playing Super Smash Brothers with probably a quarter of the employers there the next day. So you never know how everybody's connected, and it can come back and bite you in ways that you'd never expect. So Just never do that.
Mine is very similar. As Jake mentioned, I think very first thing in his part of the question, the people that you're going to school with are people that might be your interviewer in 5 years. You know, like there are people that I worked with on group projects that I know that if their resume came across the desk and someone said, oh, you know, they were the same school as you were at the same time, do you know this person? And I would say, yeah, throw that resume in the trash. There's always going to be a couple of those people. You'll remember them. I'm sure you can think of some right off the top of your head because everyone does. But protect your reputation at school and beyond. Don't burn the bridges. Even if you dislike someone, you know, you might end up in the same office as them, or they might have the ear of someone that you're talking with. And, you know, if someone finds that small connection, they're going to ask about you. They're going to ask as much as they possibly can. So yeah, protecting your reputation and yeah, not allowing necessarily your anger or like frustration to get out with someone so that it doesn't come back to bite you later. Yeah. Jake, anything else?
I'm trying really hard to think. So if anything comes to my head soon, I will say it.
Perfect. Well, those are all the questions that we have for you. As we have discussed, networking and marketing yourself is really important. So I've given the opportunity, nobody is muted now. So if you have a question and you'd like to network a little bit, unmute yourself, ask a question. You can practice your elevator speech, find out if you're on the right track. And then we just have a little bit more at the very end of the presentation for everyone. So if you'll just stay tuned, I'm going to turn it over to any questions. If you don't feel comfortable unmuting and asking the question, please drop it into the chat and we'll ask it for you. Or you can private message myself or Amy and we'll get those questions out. Any questions? So I'll ask a question that's just off the cuff, just to get people started. When you have somebody come in and they give you an elevator pitch, or you're out networking and people are pitching themselves to you, what is something that you want to hear and what don't you want to hear from someone as they're marketing themselves?
That's a good question. I would say what I want to hear are positive things. You know, I know that everyone's had poor job experiences at some point in their life. I worked in retail management for a few years before I went to college. There's always going to be negative employer experiences that you have, but that's not what someone wants to hear during your elevator pitch. You don't really want to hear someone say, oh, I left this job because my boss is terrible, you know, because automatically you're thinking, okay, if this person ends up working for me or with me at some point in another 3 years, are they going to be telling someone else, I left Perkins because my coworker was terrible? So that's something that I don't particularly like to hear is negative, especially in an elevator speech. There's not enough time for that. What I do like to hear is a little bit, you know, like a little bit more color than I went to school here, I graduated this time, the resume, I want to hear more than what's on the resume, because if I read the resume, I'm going to know all of that. You know, give the footnotes, and then, you know, I kind of want to know about you as a person. You know, what do you like to do outside of work? Things like that. You know, maybe that's 25% of the elevator speech. So it gives some idea of what you like to do outside of your cubicle.
I think I have probably two different perspectives: what I expect to hear from students and what I experience kind of after college and just in other networking events. But from students, I think I kind of specific. If I was at Meet the Firms, if I get the information, what your name is, when you're CPA eligible, if that's applicable. So you'd say, my name is Jake. You know, I'm I'm graduating in May 2019 or 18. I'm looking for an auditing internship so that I can, and I'll be CPA eligible the following year. I'm saying it pretty sloppy, but basically alluding to the fact that I'm looking for an internship and I'll be graduating 1 year after that internship and I'll be CPA eligible and I'm interested in public accounting. Because if somebody comes up to me and, I'm just looking for, and I know that they're interested in government accounting, for instance, then perfect. I know exactly who to connect you with. So if you can communicate what you're looking for and milestone dates, I think that really gives me a lot of information that I need. I noticed that outside of college, when I go to different random networking events around town, I think if I know their name and what they do, I always like to say where I went to college because almost everybody went to WSUV, and it's a good thing to talk about.
There's a surprising number of WSUV grads in accounting in the Portland area.
Oh yeah, that's actually to add on to that misconception question you asked earlier, Carrie.
Mhm.
I think when I first started, there was a misconception that people would look down on Vancouver as being a commuter campus. And I went to Clark College, community college, and that has never been a disadvantage to me and it never will be. And I find it as a strength over going to Pullman because the WSU Vancouver community is so amazing and it's very, like, they're all very supportive of each other. And I think I attribute all my success to going to WSUV. So.
There's also a lot more opportunity because you're right next to Portland. You don't have to make big trips in. And for me, I felt I was able to focus on my studies a lot more than if I was living on campus, because I could kind of go home and be in a comfortable environment with my family rather than in a dorm. But that's just me personally.
And our Pullman students, a lot of them are at home right now. I know that there's a bunch that are on campus as well, but I'm sure a lot of them are understanding the convenience of being at home and also the hardship of being at home during this time. We have a question that came into the chat that is very similar to what we were just talking about. It says, do you think that current students that are participating in distance learning will be less prepared for the workplace?
The way I would answer that is when I went to college, I mean, I would definitely 100% of the time prefer to be in class over anything online. But in any case, I read every page of every textbook I ever had. And like I read it thoughtfully and slowly, so I'd learn as much as possible. And class was a chance for me to ask questions and get further insight because our professors have a lot of experience and wisdom. So I think if it's unfortunate that we just can't control what's going on, but I think if you still apply yourself the same way, and there are still networking opportunities because you can still do video chats, I don't think that it'll put people at a disadvantage. I think if you apply yourself with the same amount of effort, it just looks different, but I think it'll come out the same.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it really depends student to student because not everyone really does very well with distance learning. And it is unfortunate that everyone is forced to do distance learning right now. And it's kind of, how you personally are able to handle distance learning. I know that some classes are better than others pre-COVID for distance learning. I feel like this has really forced a lot of professors to do things differently and do live classes. Online classes just used to be like, okay, it's very much easier to go at your own pace or, scheduling around things because you have a test window that's 12 hours and you can take the test anytime in that 12 hours, and now there's a little bit more structure. And I think for me, that would be better. That would make online classes better. Having the structure, having the live classes that you can log in and engage with your professor in your class all at the same time, rather than responding to a forum post and then waiting 8 hours for a response or something like that. So I think that the students currently doing distance learning are going to be more prepared than students doing distance learning this time a year ago. I think the distance learning has improved dramatically because of the situation. And I really don't think that you're going to be necessarily more disadvantaged, because I think employers are a lot more aware of the situation that you went through and that you're currently going through. And I don't think that anyone will hold it against you. I think what's going to be the most challenging is, depending on the industry you're in, it may or may not be very heavily impacted. There may not be jobs. That's one of the things about accounting, is that we do very well in recessions for getting students to apply, because I guess it's one of those jobs that people think is very safe and job secure. And I think that Jake and I are very similar in age, and I graduated high school in 2007. Right before the big crash. And so for me, job security is very important, and that is something that has steered me toward accounting. So I think it really depends on what you make of it, and staying on top of your own learning will help you be the most prepared that you can for the workplace.
Gretchen, we have a question that's directed to you.
Okay.
When you worked at the investment firm, what were your day-to-day tasks for new entry-level graduates? Was it difficult to transition?
Is it transition from school to work, or transition from that job out into public accounting? Probably from school to...
I was thinking school to work, but maybe if you want to address both, just in case.
Okay, sure. Going from school to the investment firm, they did have a, it was an entry-level job. So a lot of what I did was reviewing, I worked in AP, so accounts payable for non-accounting majors, sorry. And so I did a lot of invoice review and coding, making sure that invoices are going to the right department, because financial data is very important, and budgets are really important, especially to large companies. So we would get, I think, close to 2,500 invoices a month. And making sure that all of that is going to the right place is really important. Getting the correct approvals on them and everything. And so those are a lot of like the entry-level tasks that I would do at the very beginning. Within a month or two, though, I was working on account reconciliation for general ledger accounts, making sure that everything was flowing through correctly, employee expense reports, which for anyone currently doing auditing is one of the #1 places that employees try to steal from the company. So it was a very important type of task for our department to go through those carefully. I would say there's a lot of entry-level corporate accounting jobs out there. They're just mostly with big companies, because they have the time and resources to train someone coming in. Most of the small companies want someone who's already worked in the field, because they can onboard them, and in a couple of weeks they're up and going and no problems. So that was sort of my experience with that. Transitioning to public accounting was fairly similar, but kind of starting over, knowing nothing again, because they're totally different animals in terms of the field. That was also interesting in terms of totally new tasks, totally new software. Learning new software is, I think, the hardest part about the transition, because everyone uses something different. Learn Excel, learn lots of Excel.
Perfect. So this is a question that I get asked a lot by students, especially Pullman just had their Meet the Firm Career Fair. Vancouver is having theirs on Wednesday. How do you recommend keeping a connection with somebody like alive and fresh over a long period of time?
I think this is something that, like I said, I tried putting together an Excel worksheet, and I kind of did, but I'm going to this year look at a better software for tracking. But what I do is I try to connect with my network at least every 6 months, if no longer than a year. And it always looks different. So I definitely keep track in Excel, because your network will get pretty big, and you'll figure out who who you really want to put the effort in, because you can't put the effort in with every single person. There's just not enough time. So for me, it looks different. You know, I have a game night and play Catan with a certain group of people every few months. Sometimes it'll be we get together and we'll go on a hike together, or we play Nintendo. And for instance, there's this person that I met at an IMA event, the monthly events that they have, and at the time he was just a few years into his career at this reputable law firm in Portland, and all of a sudden he's a partner there. And no longer than a year, one of us will reach out to each other, and I reach out to him, and we're having a virtual coffee next week. And so it's basically a combination of mental reminders and Excel, but it's important to make that effort to maintain those relationships, and it looks different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say I don't have a spreadsheet. I think that's very specific to Jake. But I definitely agree that with those connections, you do have to decide who's going to be the most important. Who you have a few people that you probably talk to every few months or something like that, and that's good timing. Send them an email, see how they're doing. How's the industry going? If you know that they're in busy season, I will add this caveat that if you know that they're in the middle of busy season, emailing for a half an hour or an hour long video coffee chat may not elicit the response that you want. So just be mindful of the industry someone is in, and just kind of base it off of that as well.
That's a very good point. Sorry. Because the person that I was talking about, he's a tax attorney, so I'm very careful, because that's why that one I try to only do once a year, because I think they have to be so busy, they don't have time. And asking somebody out for a coffee, an accountant during busy season, it can work, but I would recommend waiting a little bit.
Yeah. The other thing that I would add is that I know sometimes especially when you're early on in your career, and the people who are important seem to be like, oh, it's like the managers and partners are super important people. Those are the connections you should maintain. I would encourage you to maintain connections over everyone, different levels at a firm, because again, those people move up, those people move on in their careers. Public accounting has a very sort of linear progression of promotions, and that person that maybe you didn't think that they were that important because they're a staff or an intern or something. In 5 years, when you're looking for a job and they're a manager, they're going to remember that you didn't necessarily treat them very well because they were unimportant at the time. So it kind of goes along with burning the bridges. And yeah, so maintaining connections over different different levels, not just focusing on the big fish. Also, the little fish have more time for you sometimes, especially at the beginning.
And Jake, if your network is playing old school Nintendo, I expect to be invited to the next time. I think there's a lot of people on this call that would not probably mind to be a part of that kind of networking event.
Oh yeah, they're big into it. They have everything.
Jake, we just have a very brief amount of time, so this is the last question, but I just want to get it out to you. Since you were also a finance major, where can I go to apply for internships for finance? I have a LinkedIn, but no luck as of yet.
That's a very good question. When I majored in finance, it was the most interesting thing for me to double major in, and I wasn't looking for finance opportunities. I needed 150 credits to get my CPA, and I'm trying to think of how to answer that. What I would do if I was, as far as finding a resource, I'd see whatever the college had. But if I was graduating in finance, I would find in some companies that I'd want to work at, and I'd find some entry-level people on LinkedIn or some recruiters, ask them out to coffee or whatever the COVID equivalent is. And it's just the informational interview, and it's a lot better to do it as a student, I've heard, because I think a lot of times if you say, hey, I'm a student, I'm just looking to learn more about the industry versus yeah, I'm gonna, looking for a job, help me. I think people are a lot more, I mean, that people are, I'm not saying it's bad, either way, but I think I have heard people are, a lot more responsive and more likely. It's like, oh, I totally want to help the student out, and they can connect you to somebody else. You can reach out to, let's say I'm going to reach out to this staff level person, and you'll have a conversation, and they could tell you, oh, you should totally, let me connect you to this person, and that's kind of how it works. That's what I would do.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for being here. Jake and Gretchen, everyone, for being a part of this.